Today, I'm venturing deep into the Grand Canyon in search of a lost Egyptian civilization that supposedly thrived in these canyon walls thousands of years ago. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to Rolling with Bearman. As you can see, we're on scene already here at the Grand Canyon. Oh, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Bearman, and me and the Longship go exploring and camping in some beautiful, interesting spots just like this. And I'm very happy to have you along on today's adventure. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join along on all our adventures. Alright, back to the video, y'all. But before we venture deep into the canyon, there's a few things we got to address about Kincaid's cave. Number one, what is the story behind the discovery of this cave? Number two, did the Smithsonian and the government try to cover up its discovery? And thirdly, I myself am going to see if I can find any traces of G. Kincaid's cave. And y'all, I'm on the very edge of the canyon right now. I don't know if you can see, but if I fall, I'm dead. Let's begin with the story behind its discovery. And for this, we have to go back in time to the beginning of the 20th century. In the early 1900s, President Teddy Roosevelt planned to close the Grand Canyon to mining operations and officially declare it a national park. And because of this, an archaeologist named G.E. Kincaid sensed the final opportunity for adventure and decided to journey into the canyon one last time in pursuit of gold, silver, or copper. The Grand Canyon is rich in minerals. So before the canyon closed for good, Kincaid set off on one final adventure in hopes of striking rich. But what Kincaid would go on to find on this journey was much more fascinating than any amount of gold. As Kincaid was journeying down the Colorado River through the canyon in his boat, he noticed some kind of stains on the canyon walls. So he docked his boat and decided to climb up and investigate a little bit more. After hiking up about 200 feet, Kincaid found a cave, and inside the cave were steps, hundreds of them, and they were man-made. Kincaid drew his gun and shined his flashlight around the cave walls, where he saw Egyptian hieroglyphics. And as he continued to shine his flashlight around, he saw that the cavern went much, much deeper. Kincaid recounts his discovery in a newspaper article published by the Arizona Gazette on April 5th, 1909, titled Explorations in the Grand Canyon. And the story goes as such.
I was journeying down the Colorado River in a boat, alone, looking for mineral. Some 42 miles up the river from the El Tovar Crystal Canyon, I saw on the east wall stains in the sedimentary formation about 2,000 feet above the riverbed. There was no trail to this point, but I finally reached it with great difficulty. Above a shelf, which hid it from view from the river, was the mouth of the cave. There are steps leading from this entrance some 30 yards to what was, at the time the cavern was inhabited, the level of the river. When I saw the chisel marks on the wall inside the entrance, I became interested, secured my gun, and went in.
Kincaid soon found himself in a vast cave system deep in the canyon walls. The complex cavern system was complete with kitchens with tools for cooking, pantry-style rooms for storing food containing pots that still had seeds in them, a huge dining hall, and more. Kincaid estimated that 50,000 people could live in this cavern system.
The main passageway is about 12 feet wide, narrowing to 9 feet toward the farther end. About 57 feet from the entrance, the first side passages branch off to the right and left, along which, on both sides, are a number of rooms about the size of ordinary living rooms of today, though some are 30 by 40 feet square. These are entered by oval-shaped doors and are ventilated by round air spaces through the walls into the passages. The walls are about 3 feet 6 inches in thickness. The passages are chiseled or hewn as straight as could be laid out by an engineer. The ceilings of many of the rooms converge to a center. The side passages near the entrance run at a sharp angle from the main hall, but toward the rear they gradually reach a right angle in direction.
And after passing through the main hall, Kincaid came across what he believed was a shrine for their god.
Over 100 feet from the entrance is a cross hall, several hundred feet long, in which was found the idol or image of the people's god, sitting cross-legged with a lotus flower or lily in each hand. The cast of the face is oriental, and the carving shows a skillful hand, and the entire is remarkably well preserved, as is everything in this cavern.
Kincaid even found evidence of advanced metalwork, suggesting that whatever civilization lived in this cavern was very technologically advanced.
In the opposite corner of this cross hall were found tools of all descriptions, made of copper. This people undoubtedly knew the lost art of hardening this metal, which has been sought by chemists for centuries without result. On a bench running around the workroom was some charcoal and other material probably used in the process. There is also slag and stuff similar to mat, showing that these ancient peoples smelted ores. But so far, No trace of where or how this was done has been discovered, nor the origin of the ore. Among other finds are vases or urns and cups of copper and gold made very artistic in design. The pottery work includes enameled ware and glazed vessels.
Kincaid even claims to have discovered some new type of metal that wasn't able to be identified.
A gray metal is also found in this cavern, which puzzles the scientists, for its identity has not been established. It resembles platinum.
As Kincaid continued to venture throughout the cavern, he noticed more and more hieroglyphics all along the walls, hypothesizing that it likely told the story of the people's religion. And eventually, Kincaid came across a crypt containing shelves upon shelves of mummies.
The tomb or crypt in which the mummies were found is one of the largest of the chambers, the walls slanting back at an angle of about 35 degrees. On these are tiers of mummies, each one occupying a separate hewn shelf. At the head of each is a small bench on which is found copper cups and pieces of broken swords. Some of the mummies are covered with clay and all are wrapped in a dark fabric. The urns or cups on the lower tiers are crude, while as the higher shelves are reached, the urns are finer in design, showing a later stage of civilization. It is worthy of note that all the mummies examined so far have proved to be male, no children or females being buried here. This leads to the belief that this interior section is the warriors' barracks.
Now it's worth mentioning that Kincaid randomly brings up some kind of theory in this article. He writes,
One theory is that the present Indian tribes found in Arizona are descendants of the serfs, or slaves of the people which inhabited the cave. Undoubtedly, a good many thousands of years before the Christian era, a people lived here which reached a high stage of civilization.
After exploring this cavern for a number of hours, Kincaid realized he would need assistance in exploring the entirety of the cave and the artifacts within. So he packed up a few artifacts that he found within the cave, and he shipped them off to the Smithsonian along with his notes. Now this brings us to question number 2. Did the Smithsonian and the government try to cover up this discovery, and why? Now when you look up the story of G.E. Kincaid, it's often referred to as a myth or a legend. And when the Smithsonian themselves were inquired about this, they simply respond that they have no such knowledge of this myth. I even read online that tour guides here in the Grand Canyon get a little bit irritated when asked about G.E. Kincaid's cave. So the general consensus is that this entire story is fake. But I'm not buying that. Now let's look at some reasons as to why this would be covered up in the first place. Primarily, this would go against everything that we currently know about the history of America and the history of civilization itself. As you know, in our written history, Christopher Columbus was the first one to discover these Americas. So it should be absolutely impossible for there to be an Egyptian civilization right here in the Grand Canyon. So if the Smithsonian and the government were to break this story to the public, who knows what would have happened? Maybe it could have just been too crazy of news. I mean, like I said, this would completely rewrite history. Another theory as to why they would want to cover this up is because it would discredit the white man in discovering the Americas. Maybe the government didn't like the idea of another race getting here first. They also could have thought that a non-white civilization would be incapable of making the technology to sail here to the Americas. Kincaid's claims were met with skepticism from mainstream archaeologists and historians. They questioned the credibility of this story because of a lack of concrete evidence. Because if this story is true, it means that there was a very advanced civilization right here in the Grand Canyon that we knew nothing about. At least we're taught nothing about it in mainstream history. Now, I personally am a huge believer of ancient advanced civilizations. You might be familiar with the work of Graham Hancock, an archaeologist who explores this topic. Now, I read his book Fingerprints of the Gods about an ancient advanced civilization thriving thousands of years before our current documented first advanced civilization. And the story of Kincaid's cave goes right along with this theory. And if you're not much of a reader, there's a very good docuseries on Netflix that tells the whole story. I believe it's called Ancient Apocalypse if you want to check it out. Now, although the Smithsonian claims to have no knowledge of such myth, Kincaid reports in this 1909 news article that Smithsonian archaeologists were actively researching the site. The article reads, "According to the story yesterday to the Gazette by Mr. Kincaid, the archaeologists of the Smithsonian Institute, which is financing these explorations, have made discoveries which almost conclusively prove that the race which inhabited this mysterious cavern, hewn in solid rock by human hands, was of Oriental origin or possibly from Egypt, tracing back to Ramses. If their theories are born out of the translation of the tablets engraved with hieroglyphics, the mystery of the prehistoric peoples of North America, their ancient arts, who they were, and whence they came, will be solved." Kincaid writes about an investigation of the cavern conducted by Smithsonian archaeologists.
Under the direction of Professor S.A. Jordan, the Smithsonian Institute is now prosecuting the most thorough explorations, which will be continued until the last link in the chain is forged. nearly a mile-long tunnel underground, about 14 to 80 feet below the surface. The long main passage has been delved into to find another mammoth chamber from which radiates scores of passageways, like the spokes of a wheel. Several hundred rooms have been discovered, reached by passageways running from the main passage, one of them having been explored for 854 feet, and another 634 feet. The recent finds include articles which have never been known as native to this country, and doubtless they had their origin in the Orient. War weapons, copper instruments, sharp-edged and hard as steel, indicate the high state of civilization reached by these strange people. So interested have the scientists become that preparations are being made to equip the camp for extensive studies, and the force will be increased to 30 or 40 persons.
Kincaid goes on to say,
First, I would impress that the cavern is nearly inaccessible. The entrance is 1,486 feet down the sheer canyon wall. It is located on government land, and no visitor will be allowed there under penalty of trespass. The scientists wish to work unmolested, without fear of archaeological discoveries being disturbed by curios or relic hunters. A trip there would be fruitless, and the visitor would be sent on his way.
Now, the supposed location of Kincaid's cave is a mystery today, but a few people have done a very deep dive into this story in an attempt to locate a precise location for this cave. And to further fuel the conspiracy, people believe that the location of Kincaid's cave lies on restricted government land, inaccessible to the public. Of course, this leads to the question, why? I mean, why is there even any part of the Grand Canyon that's blocked off to the public? Now, they claim that it's for the safety of visitors. They don't want ordinary people venturing out to these super difficult to get to caves, potentially getting hurt or even dying. But it could be to hide the discovery of an ancient advanced civilization. Now, it would be very difficult to find Kincaid's cave today, and there are hundreds, probably even thousands of caves within the canyon. Just from this lookout point, I can see a number of caves throughout the walls. And who knows what kind of mysteries lie within. Which brings us to our third point. What can I find when journeying down into the canyon myself? And to answer that, we got to get to South Kaibab Trail and begin our descent down into the canyon. As always, let's roll, y'all. Well, that's what we were gonna do earlier. Alright, we have made it to South Kaibab Trailhead, and this is where we begin our descent into the canyon. And we're off, y'all. You can see there's snow on the ground still from a few days ago. And guys, everybody that's hiking up, you can see it in their faces and hear their breath. It's gonna be a tough hike out, that's for sure. I read you gotta leave twice as much time for hiking out, so we're probably only gonna go in about an hour and a half. And assume the hike back is about 3 hours. And that should give us enough time to get out of the canyon with a little bit of sunlight left. So as I mentioned earlier, the site of the cave is thought to be on restricted government land. So it's unlikely that we're gonna find it today. But what I'm in search of down here is any caves in these canyon walls. Maybe we can stumble upon a little treasure ourselves. It's just incredible how huge this is. And it goes so far down. Just immediately drops off. Very scary. My first time at the Grand Canyon was on an 8th grade school trip. I remember learning about how the biomes change as you go down. So you see it's all like foresty and mountainous at the top here at the rim. And you'll see how it changes as we get lower into the canyon. Pretty dank. Now y'all see biomes starting to change. Seeing cactuses now. I don't even know if that's the right word, biome. I heard it in like another video, sounded right. I ain't no scientist though. The way down is tough on the knees, that's for sure. feeling it. And I was thinking about it yesterday, and I feel like I definitely felt something at those Sedona energy vortexes. Oh, whoa. Look at this. Come up here. How you doing? You guys bringing the mail from the reservation? Is that what this is?
No, there's a village down there.
Okay.
And we just bring up trash and duffels.
Right on, right on. Have a good one. Hey. That's pretty cool. I was telling you guys about how there's a reservation at the bottom, and I was reading that the only way to get mail and everything in or out is by mule. And I think that's what that was. I think he must have just misheard me. But anyways, as I was saying, I feel like I definitely felt something at those energy vortexes. Like at the first one, it brought out like emotions, like made me almost feel like I wanted to cry. And I felt like I was like connecting with my inner child at that first one. And at that second one, it was a little more difficult at first because there's so many people. But once I threw in the headphones with the binaural beats and just sat there, kind of meditated, just let my thoughts wander and whatnot, I started to feel super good. Like I didn't get the full tingling in the hands and feet like I read online, but it felt good. It felt like I was off a yerk or something. It was cool though. But yeah, I don't know. I think I definitely felt something. This is steep. Canyon is just so huge, guys. It would seriously just be impossible to explore it all in one lifetime. There's gotta be mysteries, treasures, all kinds of stuff hidden throughout. I'm telling y'all. Refuel. Now the sea level in the Grand Canyon has changed dramatically over the years, which as you probably know is what originally carved out the canyon, the Colorado River. But because of the varying sea levels, a lot of these caves could have been right at the water's edge, depending on what point in time. But now they're hundreds of feet up the canyon wall, making them practically inexplorable, which leads you to wonder what you might find if you were able to explore a lot of these caves. And the more you look, you guys, the more caves you can see in these canyon hills. And a lot of these caves could even be connected inside the canyon wall, like the cave that Kincaid found. For all we know, there's a labyrinth of tunnels and passageways leading to various rooms and cave exits and entrance points just right here in this canyon wall. But they would be nearly impossible to get to. There's seriously a cave almost everywhere you look. I would even venture to say there's hundreds of thousands of caves scattered throughout the Grand Canyon. I'd go even further to say that about 95% of them have probably never even been explored, and probably never will be. Now, while the Smithsonian and the government chalk up the story of Kincaid's cave to nonsense, myth, and legend, there's still a big mystery surrounding the story. And as we all know, there's tons of things that our government has tried to cover up in the past. I'm not trying to sound crazy, but it's true, which leads me to have some belief in G.E. Kincaid's story. But what do you guys think? Do you believe G.E. Kincaid's story of finding an ancient Egyptian civilization residing right here in the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Do you believe in the alleged Smithsonian cover-up? I'd love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments. Someone get on board with me. I don't want to be the only crazy one. And if you're interested in learning more about the mysteries here in Arizona, then I highly suggest you go check out my video on the energy vortexes right here in Sedona. There's something very mysterious going on here in Arizona, that's for sure, y'all. But as always, appreciate the hell out of y'all for tapping into today's video. If you enjoyed yourself at any point, please feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe and join me on my future adventures. Alright y'all, time to get out of the canyon. Peace!